Security, escort this gentleman out, please.
Come on, Soda Pop, let's go.
For reading. I know there's some folks here that want to speak publicly about a particular topic that has first reading. This is the right time to come up right now. Just two rules. You have to introduce yourself to the people of our town. Just tell us your name. And then number two, if you can keep your comments to 5 minutes or less, we would appreciate that. So welcome. Anybody? Welcome.
I'm Roger Elgersma. I came here about a month ago concerned about lead in the water, and I'm going to talk partly about that and partly about honesty in government and how it ties together, and thank a couple of you for your letters in the paper lately. I agree with Teresa that we need discussion to work out problems in government, and Greg that we have to have open government so people know what's happening. Today I sent you all an email with a picture of my shower head. Last month I was concerned about lead in the water, and then the other day I look up my shower head and that thing is staring down with funny colors, and it's only a 4-year-old building, and it's mostly reds and some browns and oranges in it. The reason I came last time without the smoking gun is, I do a lot of analyzing. I've been tested. I'm top 2% in logic and reasoning. But 10 years ago, there was a big fish killed 10 miles up the stream at Del Rapids, and nobody knew what killed the fish, but that's the water coming in the city waterworks. And I had an opportunity to talk to a bunch of people in the city waterworks, and these are the guys working the lab, and nobody knew why the fish died. The paper said nobody knew, and the guys doing the lab work, I says, well, you're working the lab, you can figure it out. And nobody knew, and they're all friendly and nice, and I says, well, if a lagoon broke and killed the fish, that would kill that many fish, and instantly nobody would talk one more word about it. They were all changing the subject and wanting to talk about positive things, and there was such a total cover-up as soon as I stepped close to what might have been the problem that when you learn people aren't open about government and they're not open about their problems and not ready to discuss them, then you get more concerned that there's more cover-ups than you know. And then the more open you are, the less fear people have that you aren't. And back then, with term limits, everyone used different sitting in the seats than then. So I can't blame you for what happened 10 years ago. I'm just hoping these new people, and all of you are new since then, are more honest and open. I'm encouraging you to do more of that, because this much rust coming in the water, when the newspaper says, the city waterworks says you're coating it with calcium carbonate and that seals it, it sure didn't seal it. There's way too much rust coming through. And I got something in the good thing. Just this week, the city waterworks sent out a thing that says you can come in and get a test kit to check for lead, and I'm going to do that. So they are open to discussion. I got an email from one of them tonight that I answered back that he wanted me to call him tomorrow. So there's better discussion and more honesty now, and hopefully, that wasn't just an unusual situation. Hopefully it stays better, because when problems get covered up, they don't get fixed as quick. Thank you.
Roger, thank you as well. Welcome.
My name is Orville Loneman, mayor, council persons. I'm 82 years old. My wife's name is Elaine. She's 85 years old, and she's undergoing chemotherapy for ovarian cancer. On Wednesday, June 1st, Elaine had her third infusion of chemotherapy. This is what happened on Thursday, June 2nd. My wife, Elaine, passed out and was unresponsive. She is laying on the floor, unresponsive. I do not know if she's having a heart attack or is dying or what is happening. At about 2:20, I called 911 for an ambulance and was told there is no ambulance available. I'd like to know why there wasn't an ambulance available, and also how many times has this happened. but I do want an answer. 911 did dispatch the firemen, and they were at our home, within 5 minutes and were of great assistance. I do not want this lack of ambulance ever to happen again. All of you sitting here, put yourself in my shoes. Wife or husband, unresponsive, you don't know if they are dying or what, and then the 911 dispatcher tells you there is no ambulance available. Really makes you think what is wrong with the system. Thank you for your time.
Orville, great job. Thank you. And we wish your wife the very best. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome.
My name is John Nordley. I live at 404 North Locust. Good evening, Mayor Huther, council members, and support staff. My wife and I built our home in 1998 on a lot that was once my mother's vegetable garden. I'm here this evening to help introduce a zoning issue that just recently stirred passions and united a neighborhood. I estimate that 125 to 150 families in the Oakview area are presently involved, and I expect more will be joining our ranks as the story is told. Dreams and hopes are what we build our lives upon. In 1882, a young family of 6 purchased a piece of land in rural Minnehaha County, 5 miles east of Sioux Falls. The Lacey family had left New York in an attempt to escape a tuberculosis epidemic. William Lacey, a medical doctor, and his wife Margaret McDonald Lacey knew little of farming. However, they had the will and determination to learn from their neighbors' best practice. When William died early in life, the eldest son, W.G., or Greg Lacey, fell into the role of head of the family and supported his mother and 3 siblings through great hardships. By the time he was 36, he had earned the title Potato King of South Dakota. In April of 1904, he married Christina, and together they purchased an 80-acre farm on 6th Street, 2 3/10 miles east of the courthouse. Purchased from the Phillips family, think Phillips Avenue. This piece of land was no doubt purchased on speculation by the Phillips family, thinking that the state capitol might someday be built in the neighborhood. It was supposed to have been built there, they thought. It is the last 6 acres of this farm, the home place to the Lacey family, that is the topic of this discussion. The newly married couple moved a house from the farm with horses and rollers from the present site of Mount Zion Cemetery on 12th Street. Over the next 50 years, they raised a family of 5 by selling fresh potatoes, apples, and plums from the farm. Lois Brown, the daughter of Ed Lacey, one of Greg and Christina's children, along with her husband Kelly, are the present owners of the acreage, having purchased the land in April of 1983. Lois and Kelly have spent the last 33 years of their lives raising their family of 4 and being stewards of the land, keeping the home place, a green oasis in the middle of a developing Sioux Falls. I might add that my great-uncle Jay Agee purchased and farmed on the other side of 6th Street about the same time that Greg and Christina purchased their farm. I also have long family ties to the area. I moved to the neighborhood in the summer of 1960 when I was 8 years old. My father and mother purchased 2 blocks of land from the J. Agee estate. Our home was directly across the street, 6th Street, or at that time it was US Highway 16, from the Lacey home place. The Shadco motorcycle shop was directly east of our home, and my cousins lived about 2 blocks to the south. Corn and alfalfa covered most of the land. In the fall of that year, I started 3rd grade at Linwood School. Linwood was located at the site of the present Sycamore Avenue Fire Station. I walked with my brother and cousins about 1 mile to school on the highway and gravel roads, both directions uphill, I might add. Within a few years, the interstate highway system opened, and the noisy traffic on US Highway 16 slowed considerably. When I was 10 years old, Roning's Holiday Estate started to develop, and I was the paper boy delivering the Argus Leader. I had to share the profit of delivering 6 papers that first year with my brother Dale. Eventually, the 6th Street Bridge was developed over I-229, and 6th Street's gravel gave way to blacktop. The area was developing. At age 16, 6 years later, the paper route had grown to 200 customers, and I was a student at the new Lincoln High School. The day I turned 16, I went to work for the circulation department at the Argus Leader, a job that I held throughout my college days at Augustana, graduating in 1974. The first commercial development really facing onto 6th Street was Solar Gardens, a series of hydroponic greenhouses. In 1983, that same year, Lois and Kelly purchased the home place. Solar Garden Apartments, presently Redwood Estates, took the place of the greenhouses. Since that time, there's been steady growth both to the north and especially to the south of 6th Street, for the most part developing as a quiet, friendly residential neighborhood. Certainly one of the most prominent features of the area are the schools. Washington High, opening in 1992, and Annie Sullivan Elementary, along with the Kenny Anderson Community Center, opening in 1994. Oakview Library was established in 2005. I might add that all of those properties were at one time part of the Lacey Farm. I'm a friend of Lois and Kelly Brown, and I've known 5 generations of the Lacey Brown family. Their son is one of my employees. The neighbors in Oakview community, many of which are friends with the Brown family, respect their right to sell their land and are committed to finding a satisfying solution for the Browns in the community. We have problems with zoning and the project that is presently proposed, and beginning this evening, we want to make our views known. Tonight's following 5 speakers will touch on subjects that we see present problems that need to be addressed and will no doubt escalate if zoning and project proceeds as indicated. The next speaker will be Laura Wyka, addressing perceived problems and ambiguity of the proposed zoning. Thank you.
Mr. Nortley, thank you. Folks in council, I will let you know, Mr. Nortley went over quite a long time. I thought he was laying the foundation for this discussion that we're going to have. But folks, going forward, I will stop you at 5 minutes, okay? I will. But I just want to be respectful, okay? And also, I would just ask, and Council Chair Rolfing also reminded me, we certainly value all the comments that are going to come tonight. We certainly do, and we're going to value it in a week or 2 from now as well. But we'd ask you to try to find unique things to talk about, and it sounds like that's what you're going to do. So we appreciate that. If it is repetitive in nature, I'll probably also stop it. So just so you folks understand, but welcome. If you could just introduce yourself to the people of our town.
Sure. Hi, I'm Lori Wyka, and I live at 913 North Savannah Drive, which is just off of 3rd Street between Washington High School and Annie Sullivan. First off, thank you, City Council members and Mayor, for serving this city. It is a huge responsibility, and we thank you for doing such. I live at my home with my husband and 3 children. My oldest is now a senior, which means that this time next year, I will be a complete wreck. I also have a 3rd grader and a soon-to-be preschooler. I'm not from Sioux Falls. I grew up in Albert Lea, Minnesota on a small dead-end street. Our house was next to a beautiful apple orchard that was my whole world growing up. There was something so unique about being in the woods amongst trees and grass and animals. I would actually daydream in those woods that I was like the Swiss Family Robinson, shipwrecked on an island. That forest was my home. It was truly a magical place to grow up in. So just fast forward to 10 years ago, when my husband, who took a full-time position with the South Dakota Air National Guard, and I are looking for a permanent home here in Sioux Falls. We looked at many houses until we found one little gem on Savannah Street. You see, the house is great, but the backyard is what made us buy. Our backyard is a forest. It's Oakview Park. My children now have their very own magical place to daydream and play in. But that's not all. The property at Lacey Estates has also been a part of our magical world. Driving by every day, we get to see these beautiful pine trees, apple trees, hydrangeas, and horses. My 8-year-old daughter will say, "There's my white horse." I'll say, "There's my black horse," and my youngest will pipe in, "Oh, I don't want the other horse." I will even admit that we have maybe stolen an apple or 2, and they were quite yummy. Lacey Estates is part of our magical world. So why am I here today? As you can see, I have much pride in my neighborhood, and to know that Lacey Estates could be developed into blacktop and buildings disheartens me. What I want to bring into question is this proposed rezoning congruent to the Shape Sioux Falls 2035 plan? When I went to the Planning Commission's meeting last week, they kept stating that these zones are aligned with the Shape Sioux Falls plan since we are going from single-family houses to RA1 low density to RA2 medium density. They said that was compatible. So I looked more into that area of compatibility and found that the Shape Sioux Falls plan is to have zones that go from low to medium to high density, and I found the chart Exhibit 4B Full Zoning District Compatibility Chart shown above in the Shape Sioux Falls 2035 Development Plan. It shows that to determine compatibility, you line up one zoning district to another and find your compatibility number. What confused me on this chart is that a low-density residential zoning district is defined as 1 to 6 units per acre, medium is 7 to 12, and anything greater than 12 is high. That did not make sense to me, since looking at the proposed site, it has 143 acres per 6 acres, or 143 units per 6 acres, or 24 units per acre, which would make both of these proposed zones a high-density residential use zoned area, not low or even medium. So I called the city planning office and I talked to Jason Bieber, who explained to me that an RA1 low-density zone is not the same as a low-density residential use zoned district. They are two different things, two different metrics. From what I understood from this conversation is that the low-density part of the RA1 low-density zone is referring to the type of building that can be built on that zone. It can only have 24 units per building and 2 stories high. It is the building that is being classified as low density. On the other hand, low-density residential use, which is the guiding factor to determine compatibility from one zone to another, is classifying the density of the zone, and it is determined by taking the number of apartment units per acre of land. Jason Bieber and I then looked at the proposed site together, and he confirmed that yes, since there will be 24 units per acre of land, both of these zones are to be considered high-density residential use zones. So even though we have RA low-density apartments on the top proposed zone and RA2 medium-density apartments in the bottom zone, the overall zoned area would be a high-density residential use zoning district. So for all compatibility reasons, when looking on 4B chart, we must compare a low-density residential use to high-density residential use, which is a 3 out of 5, 1 being not compatible, 5 being compatible. A level 3 means the relationship between the two zones are potentially incompatible and states that the new zoning district may have potential conflicts with existing adjacent zoning districts, which may be remedied or minimized through project design. Traffic, parking, and other external effects should be directed away from lower intensity districts, and so on. It also says that a planned unit development may be advisable. For the record, I would also like to point out that the Planning Commission spoke on how since there was already... Sorry, can you change it to 4? Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Folks, who's next, please? Welcome.
My name is Steve Greeno, and I live at 701 North Savannah Drive. I'm here tonight to represent our neighborhood, to say that we are concerned about the placement of an apartment complex at this specific location because it will create significant traffic flow problems. To the best that we have been able to determine, there's been no full traffic study done in this area since 2010. As Lori just mentioned, a compatibility rating of only 3 states or says the new zoning district may have conflicts with existing adjacent zoning districts, which may be remedied or minimized through project design. That is, traffic, parking, and other external effects should be directed away from lower density districts. We believe having this higher density zoning district right across the street to a lower density zone will create a traffic conflict, and that there is no way in this instance to direct traffic away from lower density residential areas. From the apartment complex, traffic will flow out onto Bonson and go either south on Bonson or north on Bonson, leading into areas which are both low-density residential areas. Additionally, there are no through streets directly north of the property between Annie Sullivan and Washington High School, and to the west of Bonson going on West 3rd Street, there are no collector streets bringing you to Cleveland. There are only 2 streets in this area that lead north and out to Cleveland. You can either go north on Bonson and take a left on Madison to Cleveland, or go west on 3rd Street, then north on Archer to Madison, and then west to Cleveland. Effectively, this turns these 2 streets along these 2 routes from local streets into collector streets. There is already a significant problem on Archer with traffic and parking. It seems workers being bused to Worthington to work are parking along Madison at the intersection of Madison and Cleveland. Congestion along this route will only get worse with the addition of these apartments, as confirmed by Lloyd Companies. Erica Beck stating that the placement of these apartments is to provide close access to its tenants to places such as John Morrell's. These streets are local streets, but will become collector streets if this apartment complex is placed in our neighborhood. Another major concern is for safety of our school children. The placement of the proposed apartment complex will put an additional 250 to 300 autos on the streets that are used to drop off and pick up children from school 9 months out of the year. And we feel it's significant to realize that the time of the day the children are dropped off and picked up from school closely coincides with the times that residents of the apartments will be going to work or changing shifts. At drop-off and picking up times of the day, cars are parked on both sides of the street on Bonson. Adding the autos of the apartment residents trying to get to work to this scenario increases the risk factors for our school children. We have been looking into whether or not any other school has high-density residential zoned area adjacent to it on the same block and the same street. As this date, we found none. Additionally, we feel that Locust and Bonson, the offset intersection, is another problem area that would be made less safe if, as a result of increased traffic due to the placement of the apartment complex directly right on, basically right on top of the intersection. We have learned that Principal Dr. Zeke personally stood at 6th Street and Bonson intersection after school, and he decided it was too dangerous due to the poor line of sight and speed of traffic to have his students continue to serve as crossing guards. We also have a considerable amount of traffic brought into our neighborhood through the use of Kenny Anderson Park and the library. As members of this community, we implore you that before this zoning is approved, at a minimum, please consider implementing a required full traffic study for this area, preferably, we would ask during the school year. Thank you.
Stephen, thank you as well. Appreciate it. Welcome.
My name is Mike McDonald.
Mike.
My wife Beth and I live at 400 North Locust Avenue. That's 1 block directly south of the property we're talking about here. My wife also owns a house at 3701 East 6th Street. Now that is directly across 6th Street from the property, from the Brown property. We built our house in 1983, so we know this neighborhood very well. We moved in at the same time as the Browns were moving into their property. They're friends. Our kids have grown up together. We've watched the neighborhood grow up around us. We've seen the building of Washington High, Annie Sullivan, Kenny Anderson Community Center and Park, and various commercial and residential developments. We understand they're wanting to sell their property, and we know they've been trying for 3 years. And this is a problem for a lot of us in the neighborhood because we feel that they have a right to do what they want with their property, except when it affects everybody around them. So most of us do not want to see apartments take over the place of this beautiful green oasis that they've built there. 2 weeks ago, we attended a neighborhood meeting put on by the Lloyd Company, who have a plan for this property. One of my first reactions upon seeing the layout of the project was, oh no, we're going to have drainage issues. Our street, Locust Avenue, is the low point of the neighborhood. When we have heavy rains, we catch all of the excess runoff off of 6th Street. The storm inlet at 6th and Bonson, which is crucial to this project, quite often can't handle it, and we feel it across the street. It comes down our street and then eventually makes its way down into the Hills of Rest Cemetery. The plan proposed by Lloyd has 143 units, 236 parking spaces. That amounts to over 3 acres of concrete, blacktop, and rooftop that all needs to drain. The plan leaves very little green space, especially in the RA2 area, which is the area closest to 6th Street. Please note that the Lloyd plan calls for building right up to the 25-foot setback. That setback, as you're well aware, also includes 5 foot of concrete sidewalk that has to drain somewhere also. So we have very, very little green space that's going to be able to be utilized. The property slopes significantly from north to south. I eyeballed it this afternoon, and I would say there's about a 6-foot rise from 6th Street up to the top of the hill on this property. Since the property slopes so severely, there's very little chance of what green space is going to be left in this plan retaining any water. There appears to be no plan for detention of stormwater on the property at all. They may attempt to say that play area up there is a detention area. That play area happens to be the highest point of the land. It's not going to retain any water. When the inlets on 6th and Bonson cannot handle the storm water, it'll cross 6th Street. It'll come down Locust and make its way to the Hills Rest Cemetery. According to the manager of the cemetery, they already have significant stormwater issues, and he is not looking forward to another issue. With 2 large buildings and an acre of parking lot in the RA2 area, the one closest to 6th Street, we see problems developing with snow removal as well, which can lead us to more drainage problems. If they are not conscious of where they're piling their snow and they're not careful with their inlets, they can be frozen and plugged, and then we're going to get the runoff down onto 6th Street and across to our streets later. According to Carrie Ellis in the engineering department, a drainage study for this area has not been done since 1991. What has happened since? 2 schools have been built, a library, a park with 4 softball diamonds, and extensive residential and commercial development has gone on. Maybe it's time for a new study. High-density residential use such as this such as what is proposed here for 600 North Bonson demands a good plan for handling these issues. I believe that city engineering will give this plan a thorough review. I don't doubt that. But I also believe 2 more things. Our city engineering department does a great job, but they're overworked and they don't always get it right. And I also believe that the Lloyd Company will do the bare minimum necessary to meet your requirements. There will be no redundancy in their plan. Thank you for your time.
Mike, great job. Thank you. 4:59, Mike. Nice job. A hearty welcome.
Mayor, Council, thanks for having me tonight. A special happy birthday to Councilor Starr as well, if you may know.
Nice job.
My name is Tony Burke, and my family, Stacy, a nurse practitioner in town, and our 5-year-old daughter, Ava Grace, moved into the Oakview neighborhood June 21st of 2013 at 804 North Caleb Avenue. My background has been in public safety for over 20 years. We were attracted to the Oakview neighborhood very quickly with beautiful and peaceful homes and yards, the public library, Annie Sullivan, and much more, and of course the very attractive Lacey Estates. The community is wonderful and we thoroughly enjoy living in the city of Sioux Falls, in particular the Oakview neighborhood, but the past year's activities have brought some concerns. Just last week, 4 students witnessed by myself and 3 other neighbors were driving by on Caleb Avenue, 2 sitting on the doors, 1 standing up through the sunroof, and a driver. They were videoing themselves doing the unsafe activity. On June 4th, a car was reported to police speeding at 70 miles an hour along Archer Avenue, which is a residential street. In the last year, I've witnessed numerous near misses at intersections in the Oakview neighborhood as a result of many intersections not being equipped with stop signs. In communications with the city traffic department, September of 2015, when inquiring about how we come about when we're inputting stop signs, the response from Heath Hofsteiser shared was street classifications for bigger high-volume routes, and then in neighborhoods rely mostly on sight distance and crash history. If an intersection has no crash history or sight distance issues, we refrain from installing traffic controls, as stops and yields can encourage speeding in neighborhoods due to people feeling they had to slow down unnecessarily, and unwarranted stops and yields also tend to encourage people to run those particular signs, as per Heath. This sounds like a very reactive statement and an approach to concerns for safety. When will we install traffic signs? Once there is a pattern of accidents, once somebody is hurt, or worse yet, once somebody is killed. On Sunday night, June 5th, a neighbor reported at 10 p.m. to the Sioux Falls police that the Annie Sullivan parking lot was full of cars, people sitting on their cars, drinking from solo cups, as you see up above, hooting and hollering, and unfortunately also a baby crying at 10 o'clock at night in that park. A call was made to the non-emergency number, and an officer came to escort them out. She did an amazing job as our Sioux Falls finest, and escorted the 20 vehicles out in a very short time frame. What was left behind was a lot of garbage, drinking cups, alcohol bottles. In addition, there was also coals from a charcoal grill that were thrown in the garbage, and thankfully they did not start on fire. Previously, they were thrown in the grass, as you see the exhibits there. On January 18th, 2015, at 11:30 p.m., Sioux Falls finest reported to shots fired adjacent to the Lacey Estates, the next exhibit, as reported by KSFY. Austin Hoyland from the Great Bear Division of Parks and Recreation, who is responsible for Annie Sullivan Park, is well aware of the problems Annie Sullivan Park has faced and noted an increase in issues in recent years, and more importantly, can speak about the drug paraphernalia and the alcoholic beverages being left behind. Also, ironically, food kebabs are left everywhere and are a particular hazard since they go through tires. A Parks and Rec employee confirmed for over 9 years reporting taking 1.5 to 3 hours every morning to pick up all the trash at the park. And he stated, things will definitely get worse if more apartments are built. These are just a few stories to give you a perspective of the challenges and the risks growing in the Oakview neighborhood. Here is some data to support the concerns from the Sioux Falls Police Department, Sioux Falls Fire Rescue. These reports are just a snapshot of the neighborhood, focusing on 600 North Bonson, 3600 East 6th Street, and 3610 East 6th Street. 3 properties. In 2013, 164 calls for service. In 2014, 220 calls for service. In 2015, 195 calls for service. And this year, we're less than halfway through the year and have 118 calls for service on 3 properties. Forecasting that out, we can easily predict we'll have over 230 calls for service in 3 properties. That's 1 call for our professionals every 38 hours and growing. More information and data will be provided in future meetings. Mayor and Council, my family, and the people we represent from the Oakview neighborhood strongly request you deny the upcoming proposal until further studies can be performed and the neighborhood is safer. Adding more than 140 units, with potentially adding over 300 people, will certainly increase public safety. Thank you for your time. We are here to help, Mayor and Council, make our neighborhood stronger as representatives of the Oakview Neighborhood Association, which includes sometimes taking a pause until our services can catch up to some of the challenges. We deeply, deeply respect the Browns' desire to move on with their lives and value their role in forming our neighborhood. Thank you.
Tony, thank you as well. Folks, we've had really good testimony, and obviously we're going to have some more. Just want to give you a little flavor. John, again, talked about the history of the area. Appreciate that. Lori spoke about compatibility of zoning. Did a good job, thank you. Sorry to cut you off, though, Lori. You'll have plenty of opportunity to come back. Steve did a great job talking about traffic flow problems, safety of the school children. Is requesting a full traffic study. Thank you, Steve. Mike did a good job talking about drainage issues as well as potential snow removal issues. Appreciate that, Mike. And then Tony talked about some of the challenges with speeding, as well as potential safety challenges within the neighborhood. All good topics. Folks, I just want to remind you, we haven't even got to the first reading yet. It's all good, all very appropriate. Whoever coached you did a good job. You can let me know who coached you later on. But you did a good job. I think you're setting a good groundwork. However, there's still plenty of time to discuss this. No decisions are going to be made today, okay? So there's still plenty of time. With that in mind, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Council, again, for your service. We certainly appreciate that. My name is Joy Schrader, and my husband Brad and I moved into the Oakview neighborhood back in 2000. We originally lived on Locust Avenue, just south of the property. And in 2012, we moved to Caleb Avenue, which is northwest of the library. But as these things were coming to a head with the organizational meeting hosted by Lloyd, I was unfortunately unable to attend that. So my first witnessing of how the neighborhood was coming together was at last week's Planning Commission meeting. And I'd have to say I was extremely impressed by the number of individuals, and I would say it was a larger group than even here tonight, who represented neighborhoods from both the south, the west, and the north and the northeast sides of Annie Sullivan of this intersection of the Lacey property. And in working with some of the others in our group, we decided to organize some meetings, which we held Sunday and Monday at the library. And we were fortunate to have Teresa Staley and Pat Starr attend last night's meeting. You can thank them for the coaching, I think, a little bit. But as a group, we have formed a true neighborhood association, which we know, according to the Shaped Places, is definitely encouraged for communities to do so, to be acting on behalf of one another. So we are working together as one voice, not as individual voices. We fully respect the Browns and their decision to sell. We understand that. We certainly want to do what's best for them. We know that they want to downsize, and we completely respect that. After we started having some of these first organizational meetings, I actually got to spend a little time on my feet as I walked the neighborhood, passing out flyers regarding these neighborhood meetings. And as I worked over onto East 7th Street, it felt like I was back in the day when I was out there with a wagon and my kids selling Girl Scout cookies and Boy Scout popcorn and going door to door. And the one recurring theme as I spoke to people was, we want to have a voice. They expressed their concerns over and over again. And many of the same topics that you've heard expressed here tonight. And on behalf of the difference between tonight and the Planning Commission, we did that intentionally to organize the different concerns that have come up of the greatest need. So what we are suggesting then is the traffic study, the drainage study, all of those things that need further analysis, the true zoning review if the project being designated as RA2 is appropriate based on the Redwood Estates being grandfathered in to that, so it doesn't actually fit into the low density model either. So there are all these additional things that really need further study, and that the Planning Commission used as their premise that we can squeeze this project into this box even if it doesn't appropriately fit. So the alternatives, and this has started to be discussed, kind of some grand, broad ideas, and of such a diverse nature yet that we don't really have anything to pinpoint. And we know it's premature to even really divulge some of those things that, again, the community is expressing interest in. But the underlying goal and objective is to maintain that space as some kind of green space. There are so many things that between the school district and the park system and or the community itself, we are willing to do what it takes to make sure that that green oasis, and that has been the kind of recurring phrase that's used tonight, and I think so appropriate, that this is what this community needs. We don't need more concrete and asphalt in that area. And as the Highway 100 project and 6th Street intersect in the fairly near future, or as the Bonson Avenue intersects north to Rice and eventually to Benson, the traffic in that area is only going to increase. And I'm gonna find my place here. So it's with that thought, even as traffic comes into the city, and Mr. Mayor, when we were at the Mayor's Awards for the Arts, on behalf of the Arts Council, of which I'm a board member, that we understand that even incorporating art into our community, and we take a look at the Meldrum Park project that is farther west on 6th Street, so we can use this as a welcoming sign for people as they come into the community on 6th Street, that it's not just asphalt and pavement, that we have parks, we have green, and
Joy.
I see you're getting close, so thank you very much.
Thank
So
you, Joy. Great
just-
job. Joy,
May we
Joy just
come as
relayed
one
some
voice?
alternative uses potentially for that property as well. Folks, I'm just going to caution you. Again, you've done a great job. You got good coaching. We understand, I'm saying we, the 8 counselors who serve the citizens very, very well, and this mayor who cares about you folks too. You've done a great job. You've laid a really solid foundation. Everybody can tell you're organized, you're passionate, you're concerned, and you're ready for the next steps, okay? I would encourage you just continue to build on that. These folks, they've got emails, they've got phone numbers. You can meet with them face-to-face along with our team as well. So I am going to ask you, though, I think that's plenty. I'm just coaching you a little bit, okay? There's a law of diminishing returns, too, okay? Good job, good job. Did anybody else want to engage the council on other good topics? Welcome. Pastor? Thank you.
Dennis Thomas, 101 North Blauvelt.
Thank you, Pastor.
A different topic, which I hope never takes place, but I really appreciate the bike trail. I enjoy that all the time. But around the airport, the dikes, there are gophers along the side of the trail. And I know that gophers can multiply very rapidly, and some years they take over a place. Several years ago on the Mississippi River, there was a flood. I don't remember the year, but the dikes broke there, and they determined that it was because of gophers that it broke. They had made channels through the dike, and therefore the whole thing fell apart. And so I wrote down here: trap, poison, shoot, hawks, foxes.
I love them all, Pastor. I love them all. Can we do the same thing with rabbits too?
But I don't want our dike to break someday, and I'd like to ask if someone could investigate whether this is a real problem or what other cities have done, other places by rivers have done. So thank you very much.
Pastor, thank you as well. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council on any topic? Welcome, sir.
Robert Colby. In the end of April, the Dakota History Conference was held at the Center for Western Studies. The topic was the War at the Great Plains, or War Comes to the Great Plains, and it happened to be the 75th anniversary of World War II. Usually when I do a presentation, I try to find something that I might be interested in where I could learn something. And I decided to try to look at the week that I was born during World War II. It was interesting. I learned a lot about things that happened as I made my entrance. But I also learned something else. This is the environment that my parents were dealing with at that point in time. And any of us who were born in 1942 from September on were probably from the impetus of December 7th, 1941. Now, there were a lot of people who are of interest at this point in time, and one of them just passed away. His name was Muhammad Ali. I didn't know the man, never met the man, but we did take our induction physical at about the same time, and we both had about the same deferment. Today, I can say people would sooner be me than he. Yesterday or a week ago, maybe that wasn't the case. But you learn something about the time frame in which you made your entrance. 1942 was the first nuclear reactor. Instant coffee was invented, and the God savior of all things for the handyman, duct tape. Not everybody was notable that was good. John Wayne Gacy was born at the same time. Some of the others, Richard Daley, Linda Evans, Joe Biden, Jimi Hendrix, Harrison Ford, Michael Bloomberg, Michael Crichton, Britt Eklund, Vicente Fox, Jerry Garcia, Stephen Hawking, Calvin Klein, and the mayor's favorite, Sir Paul McCartney, Charlie Rose, Martin Scorsese, Barbara Streisand, Tammy Wynette, but local people that I know and are friends who were born at the same time, James Beto, DWU president and a person who ran for governor, Francis Whitebird, Governor George Mickelson's cabinet appointment to the tribal people in South Dakota, and Porter Williams. And if you don't know him, I'm sorry. But these are people who are important. But what's happening now is history is important because we are making history as we speak today. We have a woman who will be the presumptive candidate for her party. we have a man who is the presumptive candidate for his party. One has been scoured, scorned, and vetted for the last 30 years, and the other one doesn't like to have anybody look at their personal life. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 6 months. But remember, we are living history. Look back at your own, because it's important to that help make you who you are. But it also, when you find out what was happening when you were born, that's what your parents were concerned about. Last but not least, remember, the highest and best use of any parcel of God's earth is not always commercial development. Thank you.
Mr. Colby, thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Steve Haugard. I'm an attorney here in Sioux Falls since 1983 and also a member of the Minnehaha County Board of Mental Illness. I also serve in the South Dakota House of Representatives. I'm here to talk about the proposed amendment to the city ordinance section 39. And I just wanted to address that in regard to the things I've observed. I understand that the impetus for this is the mandate letter or a letter from the Department of Justice, Department of Education, both offices for civil rights, dated May 13 of 2016. And in that letter, I think it's important for the members of the council to take a look at that and understand that it's based upon a couple of false premises. So, and I don't have much time, so please take a look at that and understand that the logic in it leaves much to be desired. I would point out that they make some presumptions in there about the use of the terms, and I think also as you review the ordinance itself, the proposed revision, it's to the discrimination provision 39.042, which talks about sex, sexual orientation, gender, and to potentially add gender identity. In recent years, there's been more of an analysis, especially by the American Psychiatric Association, as to what those terms mean. And I think when they're thrown out in some of these contexts, some people presume they know what it means when in fact they don't. As far as sexual orientation, which is part of our existing discrimination ordinance, we might think that that just means whether you consider yourself heterosexual, sexual, or homosexual, or bisexual. Well, in reality, the American Psychiatric Association has come up with approximately 30 definitions for that at this point. When you talk about gender identity, I believe that has gone to somewhere around 80 plus definitions for gender identity. So I'm just asking the council to exercise extreme caution with this. Up to this point, I believe about 3 weeks ago, you received a letter from Liberty Counsel. If you'd review that as well, that letter does an excellent job of laying out the analysis of the proposed ordinance, the existing factual elements, as well as the law that applies to it. And so I just ask that you would carefully review that. That should be at least in your email boxes. Yesterday, I spent a fair amount of time visiting with Marty Jackley about the issues here. And I want to clarify whether the other states that have brought an action against the United States, if they were doing it based on this letter, and that's correct, that is the basis for their action, these other 11 states probably going to add another state to that existing action out of Texas, and then Attorney General Jackley, being the leader, presently the leader of the National Association of Attorneys General, said that he expects there will probably be more than 25 states joining in these actions. Ours will be separate because it will be the 8th Circuit, whereas the federal district or federal circuit that Texas is in and the states that are joining in that action have some nuances to the way their suit is established. And so Attorney General Jackley has chosen to bring his own action and join with some other states in doing that to address this in a little bit of a different fashion. So the counsel from the Attorney General of our state is that this is bad law, this is a mandate that shouldn't exist, and as I mentioned, as you look through the mandate itself, the letter from the departments, in it, it just contains some rather flawed logic, some poor definition of terms. So I'd ask you to take a look at that. My concern, and what I'd ask is that the council essentially table that discussion for some period of time so that these other lawsuits can play out and be resolved. But I'd ask you to carefully take a look at those and consider just tabling this motion. I know there's some other things in that proposed amendment that are just housekeeping issues, and that's fine. But the gender identity issues, for example, are significantly problematic. I'd also point out in that proposed amendment, even after on page 2, there's a reference, separate reference, that says in regard to veteran preferences, veterans shall be given preference in the hiring process consistent with state law. And so you're looking to be consistent with state law. Presently, this proposed change would not be consistent with state law or federal law. But instead, this is a mandate that's an attempt to push this through. So I'd ask you to look at that. It's not even consistent with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and I'm afraid that it's an effort that's premature and would not accomplish the goals that the council should have for establishing good ordinances. So I'd ask you to review that.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate it. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome.
I'm going to hand out. Dr. Alan Unruh, and I'm also here concerned about Ordinance 39. My testimony is to appeal to this because I'm going to not be available next week, Tuesday, so this is why I'm giving this testimony. I'm told this is an urgent matter that came from the federal government through President Obama and the Department of Justice through an executive order, or the city could lose millions of dollars if they don't adopt this new language from the administration. The Attorney General of the state of South Dakota, Marty Jackley, wrote a press release stating that he disagrees with this as a mandate. In fact, 11 states, Texas, Alabama, Wisconsin, West Virginia, Tennessee, Arizona, Maine, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Utah, and Georgia have all come together in the 5th District in a lawsuit against the administration on this. And now, just this afternoon, Marty Jackley has joined this type of lawsuit for representing the state of South Dakota. So because this will be adjudicated in the federal courts, it would be certainly premature for the city council to rule on an issue that has not been adjudicated in federal court. And in fact, he predicts, like Steve said, that half the attorney generals in the country will probably be addressing this. Congress has rejected multiple attempts to amend Title VII over the 40-year history of this statute. There's no legal precedence and federal judicial opinion for this, and in fact, numerous federal and state court decisions have held that it is appropriate to limit the use of restrooms and lockers on the basis of biological sex. The right of body privacy has long been recognized in U.S. law and applies with full force to city employees who would otherwise be forced by the proposed amendment to give up that right to privacy as a condition of employment. The Constitution says all laws have to originate in Congress. There's no congressional action, no new laws have been enacted by Congress requiring states and municipalities to comply with this order. I'm appealing to protect the privacy rights of little girls, women, and children in bathrooms, showers, locker rooms, which have been here since our founding. The right to privacy has been long recognized in U.S. law. I'm appealing to you to protect religious liberty. The American College of Pediatrics urges educators and legislators to reject all policies that condition children to accept as normal a life of chemical and surgical impersonation of the opposite sex. Facts, not ideology, determine reality. Human sexuality is an objective biological binary trait. Male and female chromosomes are genetic markers of health, not genetic markers of a disorder. Finally, requiring a doctor against his better judgment, against his conscience, to provide hormone treatment for a lifetime to a child which will have detrimental effect that could be carcinogenic, when research shows 98% after they complete adolescence, and cognitive reasoning doesn't occur till the 20s, sometimes the 30s. We had a frontal lobe party for our kid when he turned 30. Anyway, to force a child when he was confused on gender identity to receive this type of treatment is a major form of child abuse. It would be far better to strike the existing language and replace it with a statement similar to the city's current equal opportunity statement, such as the following: a statement that would not create a theocracy and it would not discriminate against anybody. The city of Sioux Falls hires, employs, and promotes individuals based solely on individual merit and job performance, and does not discriminate on any other basis, including those categories explicitly protected by South Dakota and federal law. A simple, clean statement that protects everybody and would satisfy everybody. The city has an obligation to protect its employees and members of the public from privacy violations that inevitably would be precipitated by adding gender identity as city employment non-discrimination categories. Ladies and gentlemen, I mean, pornography today is a $14 billion industry. Sexual addiction is one of the major addictions in this country. Half our prisons are there with sexual crimes. This opens a wide open door for anybody who may have a predatory nature, and we don't know what's in the mind of anybody, through city ordinance to enter any bathroom or shower. And God forbid that anything happens to any child or person. And I just appeal, you know, a little story when our forefathers developed this Constitution, and I suppose I can't finish this story.
You can, Dr. Unruh, but
Well,
thank you very much.
I just appeal to you to vote no on this and to table it.
And have a good week next week, too.
And I'll hand this out.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Well, thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate it. Your voices were heard, and so it's good to have you here.
I just had to sit in the back there. Scott Erisman, Sioux Falls. I was just going to come forward and welcome the new counselors and good luck. And as I was sitting over there, I had a few thoughts on some other stuff. As the pastor stated about the gophers on the bike trail, there's something I'd like the Parks Department to look at. We spent millions and millions and millions of dollars on the River Greenway, but if you take your bike from about Falls Landing over to almost Cliff Avenue, it's covered in goose manure every day. And I know the Parks Department tries to probably clean it up, but they ain't doing a very good job. I think that there's a way to move the geese without killing them or hurting them or poisoning them or whatever, and it's something the city should look into because it's kind of disgusting, especially after we've built this Roman Empire structure that's just covered in manure. And if you don't believe me, just take your bike down there and ride it and check it out for yourself. As I was listening to these people talk about their property, and I'm not going to go into that. I don't know any of these people, and I really don't have an opinion on what should be done with the land. Reminded me of the county, the joint Minnehaha County and Council meeting, where at the beginning of the meeting, the microphone was on, and Council Chair Rex Rolfing and Chair of the County Commission, Cindy Heidberger, were having a conversation about the 5-minute rule. And Rex was adamant about sticking it to 5 minutes, and Cindy was telling him that they don't really do that in the county because people could come back and sue you. Now, you have to remember something. The 5-minute rule, you know, I think it's a good rule when people are up here talking about goose manure or flowers on the boulevard or stuff like that. But when people are up here talking about their property, something that's very important to them and something they've spent their whole life building up, 5 minutes is not appropriate. As Cindy Heidberger said, you could be sued. They have a right to come up here and talk about that stuff when they're here on their own time, taking time. They're sitting here. It's a beautiful evening. I'm sure they'd all much rather be someplace else. And they take it on their own time, and they're under a time clock for the, you know, I could about the millions and millions of dollars that are probably sitting in this audience in property right now. And they're told they only have 5 minutes to defend themselves. It's inappropriate. You know, we're told the same 5 people come here every night, every Tuesday. That's baloney. These are the kind of people that come every week to talk about their rights, their property rights, and their free speech rights. I'm sick of this time clock thing all the time. If somebody is here to talk about and protect their property, they have a right to speak about it as long as they want to, as long as it's appropriate. Mayor Heather came to the county commission meeting. He spoke for 9 minutes and 36 seconds. We timed him. Cindy Heidelberger did not stop him. He was there to talk about his property. And he had the right to, and she let him go. Because he was there defending his property that he owns out on Lake Diamond. Same should apply here at the council meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Folks, anybody else? Welcome.
Greetings. My name is David Zokaitis. And when we come here on Tuesday, we all pledge allegiance. And part of that pledge is, with liberty and justice for all. Well, that sounds really nice, but I had a bad experience in the liberty and justice realm that half of you haven't heard of, so I think I'll take this opportunity to let you know what happened. Last fall, I was detained by 4 Sioux Falls police officers who did not suspect me of illegal activity. That's a crime. It is illegal, per Terry versus Ohio, for police to detain you when they do not reasonably suspect criminal activity. All right. Being detained is bad enough, but I think assault is more dangerous. Assault is legally defined as actions which promote fear of imminent bodily harm. Let's suppose that 4 bad-looking people surround one police officer and attempt to grab that man's arm. I think these 4 dastardly-looking people could expect to be shot because the police officer would be in fear for his life. I was detained by 4 cops who had no suspicion. One of them reached out to grab my arm. I think that is a good way to provoke fear and should be defined as assault. Now, as bad as this story is, I think the worst part is how the 4 police officers have been defended every step of the way. I mean, the city has defended them. I've contacted various state departments, South Dakota State. They've all been defended there. I've tried to talk to the FBI, Department of Justice. Nobody cares. So anyway, I'm kind of cynical in the liberty and justice for all kind of bit. But anyway, we come here every Tuesday and we pledge allegiance for, liberty and justice for all. And, I look around at the world and I see bad things going on and they bother me. So I come here and hopefully we'll find a way to make the world a little better. And in the liberty and justice for all realm, I have a city ordinance that needs some work. Again, half of you haven't seen this, neither half have. That's the city ordinance. It says that police can remove your permit for any good cause. I'm not making this up. That's what the city ordinance says. And if you read the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, there's a conflict between the ordinance and the Constitution. Your ordinance violates due process of law because there's no judge, there's no hearing. It's just police, yanking a permit for what they deem to be a good cause. And this ordinance also violates the injunction against double jeopardy because, double jeopardy means there should be 1 violation and 1 penalty. But if you go in Saudi Arabia and get a parking ticket, according to this ordinance, you can come back home and lose your permit. That's just what it says. So it's unconstitutional. And this clause for other good cause is just almost unfathomable. I mean, how could a city ordinance include such general language that gives police such wide-ranging authority? It just doesn't make any sense. So anyway, for those of you who buy into this liberty and justice for all kind of business, I would recommend that you go and repeal this ordinance because it is such a flagrant violation of constitutional rights and it flies in the face of the pledge that we all say every Tuesday. And with that, 40 seconds early, bid you all a good evening.
Council, we are now going to move.
Y'all come back now. Here.
What kind of morons run this outfit?